This is going to be your guide for using Dragapult in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So to make a moveset video for this Pokemon, I wanted to take my time. I wanted to make sure I knew everything about this Pokemon because it is the pseudo-legendary of Generation 8. Also, it seems like everyone's running one, so it has to be good, right? I don't think so. I actually think that Dragapult might be one of the most balanced Pokemon ever created. However, when there's a lot of broken and busted Pokemon out there, that makes it a bit underwhelming. So we're going to talk about what it does, what it's about, go into a ton of different movesets, and then we're just going to see what's going on with Dragapult. So the big thing, talk about exclusives. It has the move Dragon Darts. So in singles, it hits twice for effectively a 100 base power move. Now, here's the thing about Garchomp. Being a ground type, it gets Stab Earthquake. So, same as Dragon Darts, except Dragapult does less damage since it has less attack. That's where we're starting off here. And then doubles, it hits each Pokemon once. Kind of underwhelming, but it's nice having like split damage that actually doesn't get chopped because of split damage. So, weird stuff going on right here. As for the abilities, has Clear Body and Infiltrator, and I think both of them are equally good. Not losing stats is really nice. Infiltrator though, a lot of people they don't like getting set up on, so they'll just like throw out a substitute and try to reverse sweep or do something like that. Infiltrator hits through substitute. It also gets through light screen and reflect, which there is a lot of. I find it kind of weird because there's a lot of Grimmsnarl, but there's also a lot of Dragapult. And then Dragapult doesn't really have Infiltrator for the Grimmsnarl most of the time, and I see a lot of Clear Body because, you know, weird stuff just ends up happening with this Pokemon. But it is nice, because if Dragapult tries to, like, Dynamax against a Corviknight, and then Mirror Armor bounces back the Max Phantasm, again, I've been like 100 battles with this Pokemon, so I've seen it all at this point, then it's good to have the Clear Body, because that's just going to happen. Also, other Dynamax moves dropping your stats, pretty nice to not lose stats. There's an argument for both, and I would prefer the Infiltrator ability. So let's go and see what makes Dragapult so crazy. 142 speed. This is one of the fastest Pokemon in Generation 8 with the Dex Cut, and just one of the fastest Pokemon in general. This is a Mega level of speed, and now Megas don't exist anymore. It is ridiculously fast. So, how fast is it? Well, a Pokemon has to have 78 base speed or higher at level 50 to then outspeed it with a +1. So, Choice Scarf or any kind of +1 speed boost, but that's still, like, not that crazy because a lot of Pokemon will have a higher than 78 base speed. You find 80 base speed Pokemon that love to Scarf, even slightly higher, or some kind of other speed boost getting put into the Pokemon, but it can run away with the battle. So, let's go and see some of the things I've seen. Weakness Policy Dragapult. This is an interesting set because Dragapult is a super effective magnet, but also has low defenses. 88 hit points, 75 defense, 75 special defense. This is nowhere near a Garchomp in terms of tankiness. So let's go find the Garchomp, not in Generation 8 anyways, but 108, 95, 85. Garchomp is tough. It's like, wow, I just can't kill this thing, and it also has the rough skin. So if you make contact with like an Ice Punch, you end up taking extra damage, which is actually like significant amount, 1/8 of your max hit points, and then you eat a high damage Earthquake and all kinds of weird things happen. Also, a Scarf Garchomp is still going to have like a ridiculous amount of speed compared to like Dragapult and stuff. It just kind of gets all over the place. But let's go and see what Dragapult's weaknesses are, because it is a Dragon Ghost typing, and that's a lot of weaknesses. Ghost, Ice, Dragon, Dark, and Fairy. I feel like you're going to encounter those quite often, but it is resistant to a lot as well. So there's like some weird situations where Dragapult can like switch in, not for that weakness policy set, because not very effective hit doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, like it is kind of difficult to pop a Dragapult in some situations. Then other situations you just have like the free KO. Especially if you Dynamax. If they don't have Dynamax, it is really easy to not die and then blow up one of these Pokemon in return. The weakness policy does add on to damage, but here's the big problem with Dragapult. 100 special attack uninvested, or like, you know, or not uninvested, but not beneficial nature is weak. And this Pokemon is primarily going to be a special attacker, even though it has some physical options, but the physical kind of falls apart a little bit. So, I mean, that's not threatening. Even at +2 with this amount of speed, it's scary, but it's not win the game levels of scary. And even though it has like a pretty diverse moveset, it just feels like this Pokemon doesn't do enough damage, even on some super effective hits against bulky Pokemon. So we have Dragon Breath, Flamethrower, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt. It's some pretty solid coverage overall that pop this into the Pokemon DB attack type coverage. They don't have Generation 8 updated, but for the most part, we're just going to see what Pokemon we hit. So We at least hit every Pokemon neutral with something like this. And then we have decent amount of normal effective hits, a lot of super effective hits. It also gets water type coverage, so splash as you need. Do you need electric coverage for your team? Do you need water? It's good at rounding that out. I feel like this Pokemon is actually like Greninja. It's a less damaging Greninja, so it's faster, which does have its own reliability, and it just kind of gives you coverage and a quick-ish sweeping Pokemon to at least patch together a team. But the problem is, it isn't going to sweep for you, and there's a lot of situations where sweeping or just a harder, heavier-hitting Pokemon that isn't as risky as the Dragapult seems to be a lot better performing in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Other movesets, choice specs. So here's where we can kind of see another difference. I've also seen the high damage, low accuracy moves. I've seen Fire Blast, Hydro Pump, Thunder, all kinds of shenanigans, and that's like on the choice specs because now you're trying to capitalize on as much damage as possible, as fast as possible, but with the weakness policy, I'd rather not play that risky game since we are doubling the damage, but you can run weakness policy with something like the Thunder, with the Fire Blast, with the Hydro Pump. It just means that if you miss that move, after eating a super effective hit and surviving at very low hit points, then you're going to die anyways, and that's just the gamble you take inside of Pokemon. So with this, like, well, now you know that you can kind of take a hit sometimes. You can still get blown up by neutral hits, but fortunately with our resistances, there's not going to be too many neutral hits. Like, oh, Flare Blitz with like a Choice Band or like some kind of crazy Flare Blitz Pokemon, that at least isn't going to kill you. And there's not a lot of moves that you can like super buff up with Flying, Ground, Rock, Steel, and Psychic to then become like that one-hit KO kind of threat. So at least Dragapult's got a little bit of niceness going on right there that it is hard to neutrally blow up. So you can survive, and that means like this Pokemon outspeeds, hits, takes a hit, outspeed, hits, knocks out the opposing Pokemon, outspeed, hits again, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just your average sweeping Pokemon. There's a case for a lot of Pokemon where they just keep outspeeding and they eventually take something down, but Dragapult still finds a way of getting walled out sometimes, even with a diverse moveset like this, because the special attack is so low, and if your specs, well, you only get a couple of uses of Fire Blast or Draco Meteor, and then that drops your special attack, so you need to switch out, hopefully into a tank Pokemon that can cover for you at that point. So a lot of really weird interactions, but potential damage on this Pokemon. And now we can talk about the physical set, because maybe the only other thing that makes Dragapult kind of scary is that it can be mixed, but not mixed in its own moveset. Like, if you see a Dragapult, you don't know what it's going to do until it throws out that first hit. So that can put you at disadvantage. You might lose one or two Pokemon to try to figure that out, but then once you exploit it, it kind of evens out the trade, and it gives you a little bit more tempo, and then you get to respawn, and you get to make your opponent go, oh man. So once you understand what the Dragapult does, it starts to get a little less scary. If you make the correct prediction on what kind of tankiness it's going to be, that's pretty good. Or if it's just the wrong moveset for the time, Dragapult gets exploited. I think that's no problem. Even though it has like all of this coverage, you kind of wish you could run any Dragapult at any time. Because once any Pokemon starts Dragon Dancing, that's a threat. That's scary. So it gets Dragon Dance into Dragon Darts, Phantom Force, and Steel Wing. And this is going to be like your physical set. But here's the biggest problem for physical Dragapult. Phantom Force. That if you don't Dynamax and you don't use Max Phantasm, this is effectively a worthless move. Because now you're cutting your damage down significantly. Even at +1 Dragon Dance, this won't KO every Pokemon. So this allows for a Pokemon to recover, set up a defensive move, or just switch into something that's going to wall out the Phantom Force and then respawn to the Dragapult. Steel Wing, this is decent, but I mean 90% accuracy, 70 power, non-stab. Like, Fairy-type Pokemon do give Dragapult a big problem, especially because you are going to be immune to one of its biggest things. Like, Dragon Dance, Dragon Darts, Life Orb, that actually kind of feels like a pretty painful hit, especially on that 120 attack, so being able to switch it up into a Steel Wing for the Fairy-type Pokemon, that's pretty good. But once again, you kind of have to Dynamax so you don't get blown up, and then you can try to do something to a Fairy Pokemon, but if that's like a weakness policy Togekiss, then you're really screwed over against a Pokemon like that. Or if a Pokemon can just get speed over the Dragapult, then a lot of the threat of the Dragapult kind of gets weird, and then you're like Dragon Dance Wars, and like I said, any Pokemon that sets up some kind of like crazy stat boosting and then takes out the one thing that can threaten it gets scary. So I mean, I think out of the almost 100 Dragapult I've seen, I might have been like legitimately fearful of one or two of them, and I don't even think I've actually lost because I was going up against a Dragapult or anything like that. And I've only seen a handful of Dragon Dance sets, and then like when I see that, it's like, okay, cool, you can resist the Dragon Darts pretty easily with like a Steel-type Pokemon. Like, you can just tank this thing out, and that's it. If you have any kind of defensive boosting, then you pace with their Dragon Dance, and now it's just a 120 attack Pokemon. So here's some ideas. Adamant Nature, is risky because it makes it easier to get outsped, overrun, take a lot of damage, but once you start Dragon Dancing, then you become impossible to catch. Like, a 142 Dragon Dance Pokemon is weird in that way. Like, 120 attack, that's damage, and it can take off, but then, like, its secondary stab is really bad. So that's a thing, and the other benefit of Dragon Darts is, like, one of those can crit and maybe break through some defenses. Whether or not that, like, changes the battle, sometimes it does, most of the time it doesn't. Or you can just kind of keep with that jolly nature for the safety, because then you just have, like, at least a Life Orb Dragon Darts for some kind of meaningful amount of damage. And then we have Dragapult with other things it could do. This is not a moveset, this is just some of the weird stuff I've seen on Dragapult. Like, it has one of the fastest Will-O-Wisps in the game, like, the fastest outside of Prankster or something, so you can actually lower an opponent's attack, make at least one of their physical Pokemon, if it's a physical sweeper, removed from the game effectively, under a lot of speed priority. That's really good, and then that makes Dragapult feel tankier, so that's nice. And then, like, Will-O-Wisp Hex, that's going to turn your damage into more than Shadow Ball, but back-to-back Shadow Balls is going to be more damage than Will-O-Wisp and then Hex. Things to consider. U-Turn. I think U-Turn is a noob trap. I really disagree with switching sets, especially on something like a Dragapult, where Dragapult needs the coverage. It needs to hit you super effective with that 100 special attack, or the 120 attack if you don't have any Dragon Dance or something. So giving up that move slot, I feel, just hurts Dragapult more than it helps. And then Substitute, once again, you're a really fast Pokemon, so if they're going for some kind of setup, you can, like, sub Dragon Dance. That's dangerous. That's really scary. Until you start to run out of coverage. So now you really don't have much to do against Fairy-type Pokemon. You're still exploitable on the Phantom Force. Stuff's going to happen right there. And then sometimes you see the Focus Sash, but like I said, like, one of the things that you have to do with Dragapult is you almost have to Dynamax it. That way you can get the extra damage and the extra effects from your moves, and you don't get blown up by super effective hits, and you're not as easy to exploit, but then it kind of predicts what you're going to be a bit more. But Focus Sash, it at least allows you to trade with other sweepers pretty effectively, or if a Pokemon has gotten kind of out of control, you at least get to survive hits and do some things like that. So yeah, like, you hit them, take a hit, Focus Sash, you hit them again, they get KO'd, and then you hit them again, and then you die. So congratulations, that's a Dragapult. But if you, like, think about this, you have a 120 offensive Pokemon with Focus Sash, there's a lot better Pokemon than the Dragapult for that, or even the 100 special attack, even with that coverage. It just kind of falls apart, to be honest. Like I said, I haven't really felt too much threat. I think the reason why people are running Dragapult is much like Garchomp, that I never thought that Garchomp was like a super crazy strong Pokemon or anything. It was just a good Pokemon, kind of. I think Garchomp is very overrated. I think Dragapult is very overrated. But the reason why people like these Pokemon is because they're safe. You don't have to, like, activate any brain cells to use it. Like, you just bring it out, you go fast, and then you just kind of hope that your opponent doesn't have too much of a response to it. But it's going to do something. Like, Dragapult will get something done. Whether or not it gets more done than other Pokemon, that remains to be seen, but it's just kind of like, hey, like I said with the Greninja, you know, it's fast, it's a bulk of stats and coverage, and it can just kind of patch out things in your team without even trying. So I think that's why a lot of people end up using the Dragapult. And then we can go into the damage calculation and just kind of see how disappointing the damage is on the Dragapult. So Draco Meteor comes in and doesn't KO the Silvally, even with a Choice Specs. So once again, one of the fastest Pokemon. There's not really just going to be an immediate response to Dragapult most of the time, but that low special attack really hurts us, and then now you're losing special attack, and now all of your attacks are weaker than that. So if you bulk out the Draco Meteor, that's not going to be good. If anything, if we go back to the type coverage checker, the Draco Meteor is mostly there just for, like, other Dragon-type Pokemon, so you have that super effective hit. So it's kind of like you're only using that when the opponent is kind of guaranteed to die regardless. Or maybe if you, like, if the opponent only has 2 Pokemon, and you know that the last Pokemon is, like, a Dragon-type, like, you blow up this Pokemon, and then you hit their Dragon-type. But even at the -2, if it's kind of a bulky enough Dragon type, it might survive, or some other weird interactions come into play. But it's mostly just kind of like round out your coverage, depending on what else you're missing and what else you have inside of it. And then you just kind of hurt and hit Pokemon and get some weird things done. So yeah, like, I've, like, never seen the Draco Meteor, but I've seen a lot of Choice Specs on the Dragapult. That's a thing. Shadow Ball to hit Chaos. Like I said, this is your trade. You hit them, they hit you, you hit them, they die, and then you hit them again, and then they hit you, and then they die, and then you die. So it's like, it's one of those just kind of trade Pokemon, and it's very predictable, but it can also be bulked out and walled pretty easily, so it doesn't always do that. It just kind of has that safe, no brain sometimes. Looking at some other things, we have the physical attack. So +1 on the Dragon Dance into Dragon Darts. not going to be enough to KO the Silvally, because now we're just kind of like thinking about it. Well, Choice Specs gives you 50% more damage, and then +1 from Dragon Dance is going to be 50% more damage. Now, attack is higher than special attack, but Dragon Darts is lower base power, and that's just going to be the reaction. And once again, Phantom Force. Even at +1, that's your Phantom Force. 70% every 2 turns. At +2. Sometimes a KO on a not bulk invested Pokemon. So defensively bulky Pokemon, even at +2 from the Dragapult, is just not going to care. Like, if Phantom Force didn't hit through Protect, I feel like the physical set would almost be completely unviable, even though it's a Dragon Dance Pokemon. And not every Dragon Dance Pokemon is good. Like, Flygon has it. Flygon can be scary with it, but even with that much power, we don't see Flygon in every single game or stuff like that. And then the damage does drop off for the Dragapult. So, I mean, it takes like a Focus Sash and a lot of setup, and then sometimes you just like lose that trade in the end. And then I was like trying to think about, what does it take to KO a Dragapult? Well, Grimmsnarl with an Adamant Nature just using Sucker Punch. So like priority, outspeed, does an insane amount of damage to the Dragapult, and even uninvested defensively, Dragapult doesn't really have too many responses, even with the Choice Specs. So yeah, Fairy-type Pokemon love the special Dragapult, and that's why, again, you have to see like the physical with the Steel Spike, but that can be like Dynamax and Overrun or something, and even if Dragapult goes into the Dynamax, well then we have a lot of problems, because you lose your choice item benefit. So a Choice Specs Dragapult doesn't want to Dynamax, and then I think it actually like turns into less damage or something. So Shadow Ball becomes the Phantasm. Phantasm has like 130 power, I guess, so it's like slightly more damage than the Choice Specs. But that doesn't really do anything for you. It's not like you're getting multiplicative damage and you're turning something into a KO. Nah, it doesn't really happen that way. So even just like a random off Pokemon can do a weird thing and just knock out your Dragapult. And this isn't like a bulk invest Pokemon or anything like that, as we've kind of compared with Silvally. And like I said, the only weird things about it is like sometimes it can get a little too fast and kind of polish off an opponent's team or something, or you can't predict the physical special too much. So I mean, that is like, it has that. It has the unpredictability, and then once it shows, it's like, cool, it did its one little thing, and now you know exactly how to handle it, and then like weird things are just going to break it down. So I think Dragapult is very overrated. It's just a Pokemon. It's just like pseudo-legendary, but you don't even feel the pseudo-legendary stats. The split right here makes it really weird, and then it's still really frail, and a lot of the points are loaded into its speed. That's a really nice thing to have, but unless you like desperately need some kind of sweeping Pokemon, because I don't know, it's like maybe this Pokemon works with Stealth Rocks, but I think Stealth Rocks is a noob trap as well. And even then, it's like, Stealth Rocks isn't going to convert any KOs for the Dragapult, but it's like maybe very late in the game. Opponent switched in 2 times, they took like a stray hit, there's a lot of Stealth Rocks, random damage floating around, then Dragapult like gets that hit, KOs, gets another hit, drops them really low, and kind of sets up for the rest of your team to finish out the game or something. Again, I've seen so many Dragapult, I've seen so many things go so wrong for this Pokemon, it's like, yeah, it's a Pokemon. I mean, keep running it. It makes me win more games. So, if you guys enjoy the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.